Next, I'd like to introduce our faculty presenter today. He is Professor David Roy. He is in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Science in the College of Social Science. He recently joined MSU as part of our Global Impact Initiative. He received his Ph.D. from Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. He moved to the United States in 1998 to join the Department of Geographical Sciences at the University of Maryland. And he led the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer, called MODIS, Land Data Operational Project Evaluation Group at NASA's Goddard Space Center for 8 years. He is currently co-lead of the U.S. Geological Survey's NASA Landsat Science Team and a member of several other NASA science teams. His research is concerned with development of satellite remote sensing and advanced computing methods to map and characterize terrestrial global change. Also, big satellite data processing and the causes and consequences of land cover and land use change. The title for his presentation today, which I think is quite timely given what's happening in Brazil, Mapping Wildfires from Space, Turning Remotely Sensed Observations into Knowledge Products. Please welcome Professor Roy.
Thank you. I knew someone would mention Brazil. I don't have Brazil in the slides. That's great. Thank you. This is an artist's visualization of the Landsat 8 satellite that was built and launched by NASA, but is operated by the USGS. Today, there are several hundred environmental remote sensing satellites in orbit, and they all produce tremendous amounts of data, which agencies, space agencies, federal agencies, universities, also commercial companies are using to derive knowledge products. For example, the weather forecast is based from NOAA satellite data. Fire is incredibly topical currently, thanks Brazil. This is a MODIS satellite image. Steve already mentioned what MODIS was. Over California. In the north, you see the Camp Fire. In the south, you see the Woolsey Fire, which was near Malibu, which caused, loss of life and unfortunate loss of property as well. I've been a member of the NASA fire team developing the 500-meter burn area product. This is an annual rendition of that product, showing in color the approximate day of burning. That product has been produced for the last 20 years on a daily basis globally. The scientific rationale for that product is to meet the information needs of the emissions modeling community. It's thought that wildfires cause about a third of all global carbon emissions. There's a lot of interannual variability in those emissions, linked primarily to rainfall variability, but also human activity, which is one of the contentious issues concerning Brazil currently in the media. As you see on the bottom right, most of the fires occur globally everywhere where there's vegetation, but primarily in the savanna systems of Australia, Africa, and also Brazil, which is called the Cerrado. Currently, there's a lot of fire going on in Siberia and the Arctic as well. This is a picture I took from a helicopter in northern Australia of a woodland savanna burnt area after the fire occurred. You see that dead tree there. That's the helicopter boom, that big bar. When I leant out and took the picture, the pilot, this Australian guy, just kind of grabbed my shoulder as I took it. They were pretty relaxed about that kind of thing there, less so in the United States. There are a number of factors that influence our ability to detect burnt areas from satellite data, but to first order, the size of the pixel, the spatial resolution, is quite influential. Today, we're in this situation where several agencies are now trying to build and design satellites that in a coordinated way that complement each other. The European Space Agency has recently launched a satellite that complements Landsat, which I showed the picture of at the beginning, and it's called Sentinel-2. So this is a picture of an ESA Sentinel-2 image over northeast Syria. The scale is 210 by 165 kilometers, and it was taken earlier this summer. The large black body at the bottom is a water body, and then those big extensive kind of scars, they're actually burnt areas. I show this picture because this is an example of climate change and conflict and how it's creating the perfect storm for fire. This area has been reported as the fires have been caused by arson lit by ISIS. And ISIS is apparently burning unharvested crop fields as a way of causing conflict in that region. This is a Landsat 8 image about 2 weeks later. Now I'm just going to show you a small time series as we go through time. Throughout the summer, you can see this very extensive burning. You also see a lot of burning on the border with Iraq. And then the final image was on Monday. And we estimate that about 50% of northeast Syria has been burnt. Most of that is due to arson. And unfortunately, a lot of that is of unharvested agricultural fields, which has a huge impact from a humanitarian perspective. So I'm funded by NASA currently to take the Landsat 8 data and the Sentinel-2 data and derive a 30-meter burnt area product over Africa. We don't have the capability currently to do that globally because it's a huge computational challenge. This is just showing a fortuitous day where we had an image from Landsat 8 and Sentinel-2 on the same day over the western province of Zambia. Those of you who've been on high-end safari, that on the bottom left is the Okavango Delta. This is an example of a prototype we've developed. The colors show the approximate day of burning. The blue colors at the beginning of the month, the red colors at the end of the month. This is mapped for the first time. We've never done this before with Landsat and Sentinel data at 30 meters. And for comparison, this is the 500-meter burnt area product that I discussed earlier. And you can see we're capturing a greater area burn, and we're capturing the burning in much more spatial detail, which is tremendously important for the emissions community because they need to nail down the carbon emissions from wildfires much more accurately. It's also of great importance for community resource management. These kind of data are of interest, in, for example, in California, where fire event managers would like this in near real time. When we make satellite products, as scientists, we have to say how good they are. We call that validation. It's rather challenging to do that. This is a slide, a picture I took when we were doing field work in Kruger National Park last year in South Africa. On the right is one of my Ph.D. students. The two guys on the left are European collaborators. We managed to negotiate with the South African Park Service to do measurements while they were doing their prescribed burning. That's kind of a big deal there because there's a lot of wild animals that will eat you. And when we were there, literally just after that picture was taken, we were told to stop because there was an anti-poaching patrol activity going on. And we found out the next day that they'd killed 2 poachers and the poachers had killed a rhinoceros. So that's the kind of work we were doing. It's a lot of fun, but also a bit rather peculiar. So this is the kind of data that we take. This is a 3-dimensional picture of the vegetation before and after the fire. This is a grassland fire. And we're trying to use this kind of information to see how good we are doing in the mapping at 30 meter. So I'm funded, as I said, to do this for Africa, but our aspiration eventually is to do this globally. In other words, to make a 30-meter equivalent of the 500-meter product globally. That's a very significant computational challenge. The primary reason I came to MSU was because MSU is now an emerging leader in big data computing, where we're looking at large amounts of data. So the High Performance Computing Center at MSU has this thing called Ispra, which is a fantastic facility. It's available to faculty and staff. I've got a buy-in to it. And my research group on the right, that composed of postdoctoral researchers, and I have got the code working. And we're really looking forward to making some significant research impact with that facility. This work is funded by NASA and the USGS. I hope that gives you a taste of what I'm doing. I think I've got time for one question, and it can be about Brazil if you want.
Question? What's the real rationale for doing 30 meters versus 100 meters versus 500 meters? What's the resolution difference in terms of the impact of what you're able to do?
It's a spatial resolution issue. I find primarily if we only use like 500 meter data, we just can't resolve burnt areas. So very often burns are spatially fragmented and sparse on the landscape, and so you just don't see them at all, but they're there. So your ability to calculate the area burn at a lower resolution is hindered by that. You just don't see them, but they're there.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.